What is an environmental assessment? Environmental assessments involves predicting whether a proposed project is likely to cause significant environmental impacts and public concerns, and identifying ways to avoid or reduce them. After a developer plans a project and, if a developer is referred to environmental assessment by the review board, government, or First Nation, the Mackenzie Valley Review Board follows an evidence-based decision-making process for environmental assessment. This includes 4 steps: scoping, analysis, public hearings, and decisions and recommendations. Early on, the Review Board does scoping to identify the most important issues to study. The Mackenzie Valley Review Board listens closely to community feedback, as well as inputs from developers, Indigenous governments, government departments, and other interested parties to determine the key concerns about impacts of a proposed project. These concerns can include impacts on wildlife, habitat, water, cultural concerns, community issues, and more. By the end of the scoping phase, the Review Board creates a document called the Terms of Reference, which is given to the developer. This document describes what information the developer needs to give the Review Board for the project to be properly assessed. After scoping, the Review Board conducts an analysis when potential impacts of the project are predicted. The Review Board holds community meetings to hear what people think about a proposed development and how it might affect them or their lands and waters where they live. The public also suggests questions that the Review Board should ask to the developer. The Review Board also holds similar meetings with government experts and other interested parties. After these, the Review Board asks the developer questions like: how will the project affect people or the land? How likely are the predicted impacts? How severe will these impacts be? How much do the impacts matter? And what changes could be made to a development to make it safer for people and the environment? During this phase, the Review Board also invites experts such as Indigenous traditional knowledge holders or scientists, and the developers themselves to contribute. After the analysis, the Review Board holds public hearings. Communities are invited to share their predictions and views directly to the board members. At public hearings, people speak to Review Board members. The evidence and views that the board hears are important to its decisions. In past hearings, members of the public have voiced their concerns about impacts on caribou, cultural sites, safety of women, water quality, and much more. Additionally, the Review Board hears feedback from Indigenous governments and organizations, government departments, and other interested parties. After this step is completed, the Review Board makes its decisions and recommendations. Based on all evidence, the board makes a decision on whether the impacts of the project are significant. Are the impacts acceptable? Can measures improve the project to avoid or reduce the impacts to make them acceptable? The Review Board gives its recommendations in a final report called the Report of Environmental Assessment. This report recommends one of 3 possible outcomes. 1. Approving the project, usually with added measures. These measures change the project to avoid or reduce its impact. 2. Further review of the project. Or 3. Rejection of the project because the impacts are too great. The Review Board makes one of these recommendations on whether the project should go ahead with changes, or not, to the responsible minister. The minister makes the final decision. If the project goes ahead, then after the assessment, follow-up is done to monitor impacts of this project. This way, any surprises can be spotted early and dealt with properly. In the Review Board's environmental assessments, your voice can make a long-lasting difference for your community and the land. Visit reviewboard.ca to learn about environmental assessments in your area. The Mackenzie Valley Review Board, making wise decisions that balance diverse values while protecting the land and communities of the Mackenzie Valley.